Today, we're going to unpack one of the most famous and, yeah, let's be honest, controversial ideas in all of psychology: Sigmund Freud's theory of personality. I mean, have you ever wondered about that? Why are people so different? Freud was convinced the answers could be found in a journey that every single one of us takes in our first few years of life, a journey that pretty much sets the stage for who we become. He gave this journey a name: psychosexual development. And it's a wild idea, right? The thought that our adult personality is basically forged in the fires of childhood dramas, long before we have any conscious memory of them. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll break it down into 5 parts, basically following the map Freud laid out for us. Let's dive right in. Okay, first things first. Let's get a bird's eye view of Freud's overall blueprint. He didn't see our development as just this smooth, straight line. Not at all. He saw it as a series of specific stages we all have to get through. So here they are, the 5 stages. It starts with the oral stage right at birth, and it goes all the way up to the genital stage when we're adolescents. Each one is focused on a different part of the body, a different pleasure zone. And here's the kicker: each stage presents its own unique conflict that we've got to resolve to move on. And that brings us to the most important concept of all: fixation. Think of it like this. If we get stuck on one of these stages, maybe we get too much gratification or not enough, the themes of that stage can get locked in. They can echo through the rest of our lives and end up defining our personality as an adult. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, starting with the first 2 stages. This is where our earliest habits and our first big clashes with the outside world really start to take shape. It all kicks off with the oral stage. For a baby, the entire universe revolves around the mouth, right? Sucking, eating, even biting. The major conflict here is weaning. And according to Freud, if this doesn't go smoothly, you might end up as an adult who's super dependent on others, or on the flip side, you could become sarcastic and verbally aggressive. Then we hit the anal stage, and this is a huge one. This is where a child runs smack into their first big demand from society: self-control. And it's all centered around, you guessed it, toilet training. It's really the first big battle of wills. And what's so fascinating is how Freud saw this one conflict creating 2 totally opposite personality types. If parents are really strict, you could end up with an anal retentive personality, someone who's incredibly orderly, stubborn, maybe a little stingy. But if the child rebels against all that control, you might see an anal aggressive personality emerge: messy, hostile, and maybe even a bit destructive. Okay, buckle up. We are now entering the phallic stage, which is home to Freud's most famous and definitely his most debated concept of all. So, during the phallic stage, a kid's focus of pleasure shifts. But the real story here is this incredibly complex psychological drama that starts to play out, all centered on a child's unconscious feelings for their parents. Freud basically saw this as a 3-act play unfolding in our unconscious. Act 1 is desire. The child develops this really powerful attachment to the parent of the opposite sex. This, of course, leads to Act 2, rivalry. The child starts to see the same-sex parent as a competitor, and this creates this deep, profound anxiety. And the resolution, the final act, is identification. To end this internal conflict, the child starts to copy, to internalize the values of that rival parent. For Freud, this is literally where our conscience comes from. Now, the details he proposed were different for boys and girls. For boys, he talked about castration anxiety, a deep-seated fear of their powerful father that pushes them to finally identify with him. For girls, he suggested the very controversial idea of penis envy, which, in his view, leads them to identify with their mother. But look, regardless of the path, the end goal is identification. And if a person gets stuck in this stage, Freud said it could create the phallic personality, someone who's vain, prideful, and always needs to be the center of attention. Whew. Okay, after the intensity of those first 3 stages, things finally cool down for a bit. We get a quiet period before the final chapter of this journey. This is the latency period. It's like all that psychosexual drama just takes a pause. The impulses go dormant, and all that energy gets redirected. It goes into school, into hobbies, into making friends. It's really a time for the child to just stabilize and grow in other ways. And that brings us to the finish line, the genital stage. It starts with adolescence. That sexual energy comes roaring back. But now, ideally, it's directed outward, toward forming mature, healthy, and reciprocal relationships. To Freud, this stage really represents a well-adjusted adult, someone who can find that balance between love and work. So, after that whirlwind tour through childhood, what's the big takeaway? I mean, why is this theory, with all its weird and wild parts, still something we talk about today? Well, this table just lays it out perfectly. You can see the direct line that Freud was trying to draw. A conflict during the oral stage, like weaning, could directly lead to adult dependency. A struggle over toilet training could lead to stubbornness. It's a complete blueprint, connecting these forgotten childhood struggles directly to the people we are today. So here's the bottom line. Whether you agree with all the specifics or not, the core idea is powerful and it has endured. The idea that the very foundations of who you are were laid down in your first few years of life, shaped by forces you weren't even aware of. Which leaves us with one last pretty mind-bending question to think about. How much of the person you are right now was actually decided before you could even form your first memory?